Hello, friends, and welcome to the PrepWell podcast. I'm your host, Phil Black. And if you have an 8th, 9th, or 10th grader with big aspirations, like the Ivy League, or military service academies like West Point, ROTC, or athletic scholarships, boom, you've come to the right place. My specialty, my superpower, if you will, is preparing families for these competitive programs. I'll teach you what your child should do, when they should do it, and how you can help. So stick around and prepare to out-prepare. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the PrepWell podcast. Today, I want to give a quick tip to all of the seniors out there who are writing their Common Application essay. Early applications are due at the end of this month, and regular applications are due at the end of the year. For those of you who aren't familiar with the process, the Common Application asks students to write one 650-word essay, which comes out to about a page and a half. And this essay is in response to one of 7 different question choices, or what they call prompts. They call them prompts, as opposed to questions, because they don't want you to feel constrained to answering an exact question. The question is supposed to prompt you to write something that reveals something about you, something that will help the reader get to know you better, no matter which prompt you select. Hopefully by now, you've made a lot of progress on this essay, or maybe you're even done with the essay. Either way, I want to share one of the biggest mistakes that I see students make with this Common App essay. So if you've fallen into this trap, you'll have time to revisit that essay and consider making some changes. Now, I've seen a lot of essays over the years. I am working right now daily and hourly on a lot of these essays with my private PrepWellers and with those whom I consult with specifically on essays. And there are a lot of things to think about. How is my opening? What about my closing? Am I using good word craft? What about my grammar and punctuation? Are there any typos? Am I being economical in my writing? Am I writing about a common or an uncommon topic? If it's a common topic, am I using uncommon language or wordcraft to balance it out? Am I showing the reader what I value or what I care about most? Am I sharing any insights that I've learned that most teenagers wouldn't really see? Am I showing vulnerability? Is my topic aligned with my intended major? And I'm not going to address all of these things today. Obviously, these things are important, but it would take me a long time to address each one of these. This is why it takes some of my private PrepWellers and me 6 or 7 weeks to finish a Common App essay that really knocks the ball out of the park. Now, of course, there are a lot of variables that go into how long it might take to finish a Common App essay. When you start, how motivated you are. Are you eager to get writing, or are you a procrastinator? How good a writer are you to start with? How engaged are you in the process? What types of schools are you applying to? How selective are they? How much time are you putting into the brainstorming process and outlining process? How much tolerance do you have for rewrites? How much time do you have to commit to writing the essay? Now, all these things and more will determine how long the process takes. I've worked with some students on their essay for 7 weeks, as I said, and others for 7 days when it's a real crash course. The mistake I want to highlight today is a big one and a very common one. And that mistake is to focus your essay too much on a story or on other people and not enough about you. What do I mean by that? There's a temptation by many students to spend a lot of time on the story, the challenge, the circumstances surrounding a particular event, and not so much time on what they learned from the story or the challenge or the event, or how those lessons learned will influence them going forward and give them a certain perspective going into college. Similarly, students often spend a lot of time talking about other people in their essays, their grandparent, a coach, a friend, a mentor, a twin sister, and not so much time talking about themselves. Both of these cases are problematic because the admissions officer who's reading the essay doesn't really care all that much about the story or the challenge or your twin sister or your grandmother. No disrespect to those people or events, but their job is to get to know you better. And the story or the person is just a vehicle to get them there. And if you make it difficult for them to get to know you, you're making it difficult for them to get behind your application. Because if they like you, they will often have to advocate for you in a committee room of their peers. So they want you to provide them with a lot of ammunition. If you give them a really cool story, but not a lot of substance about you, they'll have a hard time selling you to the committee. It's not really that compelling when your advocate has to say, oh yeah, she wrote a great story about her grandmother. That leaves the rest of the people in the room wondering, okay, that's nice, but what do you know about the student? We're not admitting her grandmother. Now, don't feel bad if you're thinking to yourself, oh crap, he's describing my exact essay. I talk way too much about X and not enough about me. If that's the case, it's okay, because you have some time to rejigger it if you want to. This is very common, and I know why it happens. It happens mostly unconsciously, because when you start to write, it's far easier to write about events or other people than it is to write about yourself or what you learned or how what you learned has changed your perspective or your worldview. So the essay turns out to be about 75% about the event or the other person and maybe 25% about you, when in reality, it should be the inverse. Ideally, at least 50% of the essay should showcase what you learned, how you came to these conclusions, and how these insights will play out in your college years and beyond. And no more than 50% of the essay should be devoted to an event or a person that may have helped you come to these conclusions. Now, that doesn't mean that you start taking the calculator out and counting words to figure out the perfect 50-50 split. I'm not suggesting that there's a perfect mix or split or formula, whether that's 50-50 or 55-45 or 60-40 or 80-20. I'm just suggesting that you read over your essay and think to yourself, how much of this essay roughly am I spending on story time, and how much am I spending on me? And if it seems really out of whack, and you have a beautiful story that takes up 90% of the essay, and you wrap up the essay with a quick 2-sentence summary about what you learned, then you're probably not where you want to be. When the admissions officer finishes reading your essay, they should have a good grasp on who you are as a person. What made you make the decisions you made? What did you learn from them? How might you handle something similar if it happens to you while in college? Sometimes when I'm reviewing an essay, I will highlight the sections in yellow where the student actually reveals something about themselves, or an insight that they picked up on, or a lesson that they learned. And if the essay only has 2 or 3 highlighted lines, then maybe it needs to be rebalanced. The reason that many students fall short on the personal stuff, if no one calls them out on it, is because they don't spend enough time reflecting on how this particular event or person impacted them. They focus on getting the storytelling part just right. This is why it's sometimes helpful to have someone like me or some other trusted advisor take a look at your essay and challenge you to think more deeply about what it all means. After all, these essays are meant specifically to see how much time you've spent reflecting on your high school years, and your life in general for that matter. They're not meant to gauge what type of storyteller you are. You really want to spend time sitting back and reflecting on the question of, so what? So what does this mean? Who cares about this story or this person? What does this story or person have to do with me and who I am and where I'm going? That's not always an easy thing for a teenager to do, but it's your job to do it if you want to write a winning essay. So my advice is, to those of you who have already written your essay, to reread that essay and see how you're balancing story versus self. And if you're in the middle of writing your essay, be aware as you're outlining and brainstorming and typing of how you're balancing story versus self. I hope this was a helpful tip. Please keep cranking on those essays and let those colleges know what you've learned and how those lessons learned will take you where you want to go in college and beyond. That's all I've got for you today, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for the continued support. If you know a parent, in this case with an 11th or 12th grader in high school that might find this helpful, please share the episode with them. You can do that by finding that small box with a tiny arrow pointing up. That's the share button. Click that button and text your friends the link to this episode. Put a little personal note in there from you for them to give it a listen. Of course, if you have questions or comments or an idea for an upcoming episode, please don't hesitate to reach out to me by email, DM me on Instagram, check out our blog, Facebook, connect with me on LinkedIn. I would love to hear from you. Until next week, goodbye, good luck, and never stop preparing. This podcast is brought to you by PrepWell Academy. PrepWell Academy is my one-of-a-kind online mentoring program that delivers to your 9th or 10th grader a short, highly relevant video from me every week, every Sunday in fact, where I give them a heads up about what they should be thinking about to stay ahead of the game. To get these valuable lessons into your child's hands, please head over to PrepWellAcademy.com and enroll your child today.